Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov gang. Our gang members this evening, Eric Allan Bell, writer and filmmaker. He was just fired at the Daily Kos for having the courage and the audacity of telling the truth about Islam. Mark Tapson, one of the best investigative journalists in the Western world today. He also has the distinguished status of being a Shillman Journalism Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And Nonie Darwish, a modern-day freedom fighter and the author of the new book, The Devil We Don't Know, The Dark Side of Revolutions in the Middle East. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We have two new Glazov gang members with us this evening. Nonie has already been initiated on a former show. I have to warn the new gang members, as I warn all the gang members, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never
leave.
Is that why you lock the door?
Hotel California.
Hotel California.
And you know that too, Mark,
sure.
from your rock and roll days.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. This segment is called See No Islam, Hear No Islam. Eric Allan Bell, you've recently had an experience where you said some things that were true about Islam, and you were fired from the Daily Kos. In your profound wisdom, give us a Coles Notes version of what happened, where things stand now, and what you think about it.
I wasn't technically fired because, like a lot of blogs, they don't pay you to write there. Daily Kos is one of the bigger liberal blogs around. They get about 1 million visitors a day. And if enough people give you sort of a negative mark, you go into an auto ban mode. So I was banned out by popular consensus. The readers decided they didn't want me there. I had written 3 articles in a row. The first one was called Loonwatch.com and Radical Islam. The second one was How and Why Loonwatch.com is a terrorist spin control network. And the third was simply, Do you support human rights? And that finished me off. I would add that on Loonwatch.com there were a number of articles protesting my articles, one of which a man who simply calls himself Danios, I have no idea who he is, what his last name is, nothing, included a link for people to write in to the editors of Daily Kos demanding that I be silenced, and it worked.
Now, Eric, you said that there was like a vote of the majority of readers or members. How does it work?
I'm speculating. It was one of the other. Either the vote did it or the numerous emails to the editors of Daily Kos coming from Loonwatch. Both things happened simultaneously. Which one was the breaking point, I don't know. My emails into the editors of Daily Kos have gone unanswered.
There might be a connected theme here in terms of also where Nonie's from and what we see happening in the Middle East, that democracy temporarily can be very totalitarian. I'm alluding and referring to the majority
the tyranny
supported
of the
censorship, right? Before we move on to our other guests, Eric, what are 1 or 2 or 3 things that you had said that had put you into this trouble?
Well, I think the thing that really caused people to be up in arms calling me an Islamophobe was information about, who is Muhammad? How many people has he killed, beheaded, tortured, ordered stoned, the rape of a 9-year-old girl? Is this a holy man? Is this somebody who you should follow and say, I belong to the religion of peace? That was probably the most damning thing.
And what's fascinating in our culture, and later we'll discuss the way that the left controls the boundaries of discourse, is you simply can't say this about, especially an adversarial cultural religion. But the thing is that this is what Islamic sources say. It's not us or other people defaming the religion. This is what the Quran says, the Hadith say, etc.
And throughout the first article, I referenced numerous passages from the Quran and the Hadith. Like, don't take my word for it. Here it is out of the Islamic texts, which apparently those are Islamophobic, according to the Kos readers.
Are you upset, angry, shocked, sad?
I was disappointed. I knew there was going to be some blowback. I just, to be honest with you, didn't know it would be almost unanimous. There's just no room within that culture of the liberal blogosphere for anyone who doesn't toe the party line.
Mark, you are an expert on the left and Islam as well. What do you think about what's this narrative in terms of what's happened to Eric Allan Bell? In terms of what the Daily Kos, what it says about the left, but also what it says about what's happening in our society at large. Why has he been fired?
Well, what it says is that you can't talk about the truth. You can't tell the truth about certain things that go against the left's religion of multiculturalism, which basically asserts that every culture is worthy and valid and off limits to criticism, except, of course, Western civilization, which is the fount of all evil and oppression. And to even raise some of these issues, and like you said, you were actually quoting from Islamic sources, but even to raise those issues gets you marked instantly as an Islamophobe, and that's the end of discussion.
And Mark, and for many people, I'll tell you, I spent 10, 15 years in academic circles, and to be branded in this way, they would rather avoid the truth than to be branded in this way. Because I know people that I would say, read this, read this, read this. Yeah. These are facts, but they want to stick to that multicultural belief system, even if it's wrong.
They have to cling to that narrative, because if they don't, then their religion starts to fall apart. The whole structure of their thinking starts to collapse.
And they lose their friends. They lose their social status. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You lose those things, you're just branded an Islamophobe, which is like being branded a racist, basically.
I will tell you, I've had some friends that pushed me away out of their lives, perhaps for legitimate reasons on some levels, but on other levels, they simply didn't want me coming around, because when I would speak around their friends, it was too much for them to handle, too many facts. They wanted to be popular with their friends. They wanted to be left alone and be leftist or liberal. Nonie, you come from a totalitarian environment in this context in terms of Islam, not necessarily the radical left, but they find common ground on a lot of levels. What do you think about all of this, what's happened to Eric and what's been said so far?
Well, there's a lot of similarity between the left and the way Islam operates in the Middle East. The fact that there is a website called Loon Watch is exactly that's the modus operandi of
And they probably
Islam.
consider you a loon.
Oh, of course.
Sure,
In Egypt, I remember anybody who dares to even ask a question about Islam will be branded immediately crazy. So coming here to America and seeing the same dynamic by the left, branding us names, calling me Islamophobe when how can I be have a phobia of a religion I escaped from because it discriminated against me, it oppressed me as a woman, it oppressed many people, even men. Men are not supposed to, their priority is not their family and their wives and their happiness. The priority of a man is to kill himself in jihad. And I lost my father in jihad. So when I see a society so fixated on aggression to the outside world, then internal improvement, then I have to speak. Because unfortunately in the West, they advocate that all cultures are equal, all ideologies are equal, all religions are equal.
Yeah.
But if all ideologies and all religions are equal, why get an education then?
Yeah. I will add to that, though. There's cultural relativism and moral relativism, and all religions are equal. But when it comes to Jimmy Swaggart or the right-wing evangelists, all of a sudden they're terrible.
Catholics.
But 1 second before we move on, speak to Eric a little bit about him. I don't want to use labels here or define his experience, but there has been a breaking of ranks here a little bit on his side. Are you encouraged to see this courageous truth-telling?
Absolutely, because I identify with him, because I was in his position, but for different reasons. He was a liberal, and he's starting to become his own man and really discover the truth. I was a Muslim, and I lived in an Islamic country where people, you had to think this way. And when I came to America, and I saw a lot of things that I grew up with that I took for granted as 100% true, and I started realizing that it's not true, but I could never say it in front of other Muslims, because if I ever say it in front of other Muslims, I'd be branded either crazy or an infidel or kill her. So I kept it to myself.
Thank you, Nonie. I'm sorry for interrupting. We just have a little bit of time left in the first segment. Eric, what would you have thought of somebody like Nonie Darwish 2-3 years ago, and what you are thinking today in terms of sitting next to her, and perhaps you guys aren't yelling at each other?
It's not even a speculative question. I had contacted Ms. Darwish about 2 years ago.
Were you being nice?
No.
Okay.
I wrote her an email and said she had come to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and spoken at what I think is the largest church there, and told her story. It was my perception at that time, and it is not my perception now, that the point was to scare everyone into thinking all Muslims are terrorists and we can't have a mosque, and by the way, buy my book. I was wrong. It was my perception at the time, and I wrote her some emails expressing my point of view.
Conclude, or at least update us, how was the angle that you were looking at things distorted, and how have you changed?
Well,
were you asking the wrong questions?
Probably not asking enough of questions. Yeah, I think there's something to that. You know, we still have some points of view where we differ. I mean, she was saying stop the mosque. My feeling is the mosque, they have a right to build it. Until they break the law, let them build the mosque. This is America. Let's not start to compromise our American way. Let them build the mosque. So that was our point of disagreement. As I started to really study Islam over the last, say, year or so, more and more footage and writings of Nonie Darwish came up that I thought, oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, we have just a minute left in this segment. Mark, your conclusion for us on Hear No Islam, See No Islam, and what you think this whole story signifies in terms of Eric specifically.
Well, my conclusion is that somehow we've got to break through these bonds of political correctness and the real issues and the actual ideology behind Islam. We have to start talking about those things and be able to discuss them on a rational level. We can't let ourselves be shut down with these kinds of labels.
Nonie?
Yeah, I think the point that he, that makes it a person like him think that I'm against the building this movement of building mosques everywhere. The problem is the Islam, in my opinion, is not just a religion. The religious side of Islam is perhaps maximum 10% of the ideology. Islam is, first of all, a political system, a legal system, and a military institution called jihad.
So you're saying that it's not necessarily a freedom of religion issue,
exactly.
Right? Nonie, we're going to continue this in our second segment. We're going to have to go, and we'll be back. Thank you for joining this first segment of the Glazov Gang. We'll be back tomorrow evening with the topic, The Road Less Traveled, how each of our guests have broken ranks in their life. Good night.